It's the Ross Tucker Football Podcast.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Wisdom Wednesday, and he's back. The host of the awesome Business of Sports podcast, longtime NFL executive and agent and all those things. Andrew Brandt is back. Thank goodness, because number one, I want to hear about the Business of Sports this week with Chris Nowinski from the Concussion Legacy Foundation. Number two, I've got a couple questions I have been dying to ask Andrew for like a month, like at least 3 weeks, whenever the last time is that he was on. So looking forward to talking with Andrew momentarily. Looking forward to announcing the Spread the Word winner on Friday. Just quote tweet at Ross Tucker Pod. Go to at Ross Tucker Pod on Twitter, quote tweet any of the shows that you like and say, love this show, or I love this part of it, or whatever. You'll be the Spread the Word winner. I'm giving you the answer to the test. Our sponsors this week are awesome. We got a bunch of new ones. The Game Time app is amazing. Sling is awesome. Masterworks, loving that we're breaking out some new sponsors here in October, aka Q4 for you business folks. YouTube shout out, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. And then the patron of the day, Jacob Eisner, racking up the Tuckheads at patreon.com/RT Media. Yeah, I'm sure most of you just want to see the even money bets in black and white because we're killing it. That's fine. Engage, though. Be a part of the other threads. Be a part of the other conversations. I want more of you guys to be a part of this awesome, growing, burgeoning, some might say burgeoning community that we have. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
All right, I already mentioned it like a minute ago. He's the host of the Business of Sports podcast. He's the world's most interesting man. If you follow him on social media, if he's not doing a triathlon somewhere, he's getting a track workout in at SMU, or he's always somewhere doing something. He's the great Andrew Brandt, at Andrew Brandt on Twitter. And Andrew, I have a bunch of Tua questions, but I want to start with Lamar Jackson. But before I even do any of that, tell me about the latest Business of Sports with Chris Nowinski. I didn't get a chance to listen to it yet because I think you just posted it last night, but I bet he had a lot to say about this Tua topic.
Yeah, I wanted the sort of a real voice on this, Ross, and good to be with you as always. The Tua thing continues to linger in my mind. I think a lot of people's minds. Like you said, we're going to talk about it in a few minutes, but Chris is a guy that you and I know well that is really, I guess, a leading voice on this issue. And what is the issue? The issue is return to play. And your day, my day in the NFL, there wasn't this much consciousness about that. And it seemed like the past 7-8 years, there was a lot of consciousness about keeping players out. When in doubt, keep them out. But we kind of lost sight of it. And then this Tua thing happened. Anyway, I wanted to get Chris's interesting insights on this and the issue of second impact syndrome in not letting a brain concussion injury recover, so it's more susceptible to a second injury. We know that Tua had an injury against the Bengals. We don't know if he had it against the Bills, but Chris really went deep inside what should have happened, what he thinks did happen, and real concerns about Tua's health brain-wise in the future. I think everyone should listen to this.
Yeah,
I
literally, I was just going to say that, Andrew. I'm 1,000% listening to every second of that episode because I'm a big fan of Nowinski's and I want to hear what he says about Tua moving forward. Because somebody asked me yesterday on a radio show, do I think Tua will play again this year? And I said, yeah, I think Tua will play again this year, but maybe there's more to it than I realized. We'll get to the Tua stuff, Andrew. It's been like a month. I have to ask you about Lamar Jackson. I don't think you've been on in a month. So It seems like following you on Twitter that you, I don't know if support is the right word, but you kind of like that Lamar Jackson's playing this year out and that he's going for the fully guaranteed contract. I wanted you to explain why.
Yeah, Ross, thanks. And yeah, I've talked about this a lot, and I guess we haven't talked about it. It's all the elephant in the room that happened in March. Deshaun Watson signs this incredible contract. It's still the best, and maybe will be the best for a long time, contract in NFL history, with the security of it. 5 years fully guaranteed. It's like a baseball or basketball contract, not like a football contract. No one's gotten this. Kirk Cousins got 3 years, but that fourth and fifth year is really a bridge too far for all these teams. And we've seen it. Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, and Derek Carr have done deals since Watson, and they're in the traditional NFL format, 2 or 3, part of 3 years guaranteed, and then we'll see, right? And people say, well, they'll never cut a quarterback. Well, there are people wanting to cut Russell Wilson this year, let alone in 5 years. So that has been done by agents. Now, the guy without an agent, Lamar Jackson, has said, I think, to the Baltimore Ravens, no, I'm not doing one of those deals. I'm not doing one of those traditional 2-3 guaranteed, 4 or 5 years unguaranteed. Team has all the options. Team has all the leverage. I want Watson. And the team balked. We had a sign of this back when Steve Bisciotti talked about this deal back in the owners' meetings end of March. And here we are. The guy without an agent is being more, I guess, strong in his negotiation than the guys with an agent. But here's the problem for Lamar. You and I know this. You've seen me on Twitter. He can't really bet on himself because we got the franchise tag. How do you bet on yourself if you can't be a free agent? So here's the ultimate irony, Ross. The best future bet for Lamar is actually to sort of not play well and get hurt. I hate to say this because that's the only way possible, and maybe even not. The Ravens don't put the tag on him in 2023. And if he goes to market even after a bad year, even after an injury, he'll make a lot more than what he's making in the franchise tag.
So here's what I don't understand. And
Yeah.
I've been like literally waiting to get you on to discuss this. They offered him a 5-year extension for over $250 million, $133 million guaranteed at signing, reportedly. Okay. So we assume $133 million guaranteed at signing. That's probably what, the first 3 years? First
Right.
3 years of because if it's a 5-year extension, so it's this year and 5 more. So basically 6 years. So the first 3 years. So he gets 3 years guaranteed. The reason why you want a fully guaranteed deal is because the concern is they can cut you at any point after the fully guaranteed money. But Andrew, if they cut him after 3 years, then he's a free agent. That's what he wants anyway. Like I guess I don't understand the downside of it. You either get your $50 million a year, whatever the number, the math turns out to be, or you get your $133 million for 3 years, and then they cut you, and then you're a free agent, which is what you want in the first place. As it stands right now, he's basically going to do a 1 year at a time guarantee. This year, next year, franchise tag. The year after that, franchise tag. Why not get all 3 of those years guaranteed right now? And if they cut you at the end of the 3rd year, the 4th year, whatever year, then you're a free agent, which is the whole thing you're hoping to gain in 2 more years, 3 years anyway.
Okay, it's a good question. And I think you answered it with your last comment there, because he wants to get to free agency. It's the holy grail for NFL players. And you don't want to rely on being cut to get to free agency. I understand what you're saying. He makes 133, and then, oh my God, if they cut him, well, then he makes another big contract. Well, the whole issue for teams, and I know did this for 10 years, is contract control. You want years, especially non-guaranteed years, because then you have control. Maybe you don't want to cut him. Maybe you want to lower his salary. Look what the 49ers did to Garoppolo. I know he was turning into a backup, but now they've got Garoppolo for like $7, $8, $9 million as their starting quarterback. So this is what teams want. They want years. They want control. Russell Wilson's under contract 7 years. you think they're going to maybe not cut him, but they're going to go to him at some point and say, yeah, we can't live with this anymore. So this is why Lamar Jackson, if I was representing Lamar Jackson, I would have said, hey, Ravens, we accept 133 million, 3 years. Stop it there. Just stop it there. Because now there's precedent for 3 years guaranteed with Kirk Cousins at a much lower number. So they can live with that and they don't go to Watson. Now, I wonder if A, that was asked, and B, the Ravens would do that. But I would do exactly what you're saying without the extra years. Just give me the 133. Let's call it a day. I'll see you in 3 years.
So the difference is then in my mind is, does he want to be a free agent so he can pick his team, or is it just a money thing? Is he happy in Baltimore? And because in my mind, if it's just a money thing, then I think he would have been better off signing the contract extension offer. If it's he really wants to maybe go to another team or live somewhere else, then that's a different scenario. Then that's a different thing. But if we're just talking finances, I think the 133 million is more than he gets the next 3 years working off the franchise tag, and he has to take those years one at a time, whereas he would get it fully guaranteed those 3 years. Then after that, if they cut him or whatever, he's a free agent anyway.
Well, why do you think, this is the argument I tell people all the time, if it doesn't matter, why do you think teams are so against these kind of contracts? You know, I hear people say, well, they're not going to cut a quarterback. What's the big deal? Well, if that was not a big deal, teams would do it. Teams don't want to do this. So I think what you're saying is a lot of players say, I'm happy where I am. I want to stay. Pat Mahomes, I'll sign a 12-year deal. I love it here. It's up to the agent, which is ironic here because he doesn't have an agent, to say, hey, we have to look out for your long-term future. The team doesn't care about you long-term. They say they do now, but who knows in 5 years? So I just think you and I are kind of saying the same thing. He wants the money, but teams want the control. And why shouldn't he ask for control? Listen, if Deshaun Watson never happened, I get it. He's got to take that deal. He's got to take that deal. But Deshaun Watson happened. And here's the big picture, Ross, before we leave this. Lamar Jackson's the key. Whether Deshaun Watson goes into the history books as this outlier contract, and NFL players, even the superstars, go back to this couple years guaranteed, 4 or 5 years non-guaranteed, or they go to stronger contracts. If Lamar falls back into the Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray camp, I mean, how's it going to happen? Is Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert? I mean, who's going to be someone that fights against owners screaming outlier with Deshaun Watson? I'm an expert on this field. We're at an inflection point. Is it going to be Deshaun Watson's just this 2022 outlier that never happens again? Or are we going to follow it up as precedent? That's the question.
My question for you about Tua is twofold. One of which is, I know you went over a lot of this with Chris Nowinski, but that's kind of a different conversation about second impact syndrome, all those things. I want to go to your experience when you were working in the league. What is your understanding, Andrew, of who all was involved in the decision for Tua Tagovailoa to play against the Cincinnati Bengals? Talk to me about the people that are in that room and having that discussion based on your experience.
The Bengals not return to play on the Bills now.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, I preface this and I don't want to cop out here. I managed in a different era. But you do have these discussions, and the discussions are with general manager, head coach, medical staff. And I would sit in general manager, head coach, medical staff. And it's simply a question of, can he return to play based on the medical opinions? We are in a different age, I hope, now, where everything is deferred to medical, where players are held out. And I was with a very conservative medical staff in Green Bay. You've seen over the past few years, Aaron Rodgers' injuries held out a lot longer than maybe he thought or people thought. I think very conservative. But again, we didn't have a lot of discussions like this regarding the brain. We had it regarding knees and hamstrings and hips and shoulders. So it's got to be a deference to medical, which again is part of this investigation. How did this happen with Tua?
I'm so confused by so many things. Like on some level, Andrew, when they put him back in the game against the Bills, I don't want to say they forced their hand, but then it'd be an awful look if they didn't have him play against the Bengals. It'd be like, well, wait a minute. It was a back injury, so he was able to go back in against the Bills, but now it's a head injury and he can't play against the Bengals. It's almost like they were I don't play poker, but they were like pot committed, right? Like they'd already gone all in on it's his back, it's not his head. He can play. The other thing I don't really understand is I think it might have been Monday, Andrew, where he was already ruled out for this game against the Jets. I got to be honest with you. I don't understand that either. Like, isn't there a process? Isn't there a concussion protocol? How did they know on Monday, Andrew, that he won't clear the protocol by Sunday? How is he already ruled out? I'm a little bit confused as to the process of how Tua's already ruled out when there's a concussion protocol in process.
All great questions. And here's mine that's still never been answered that I do believe I raised before the game. I know Chris was the leading tweeter about Tua not playing before the Bengals game. But my question is this. We have an inquiry. The NFL and NFLPA joint inquiry into the Tua situation from the Bills game. How is Tua playing in the Bengals game when there's an inquiry into whether he should have been returning to play in the Bills game? How is he playing in the Bengals game? I didn't get that. And that obviously looks like a bad decision. So there's a lot going on. We've seen the unaffiliated neurological consultant fired. My sense is what happened there is he got persuaded by Tua to let him back in the game. So this is not a good look. As we talked about, we made progress. And where are we going here? It seems like a lot of cover, as you just said. Of course, he's not going to play in the next game because we're going through this whole thing. Well, shouldn't have that been for the Bengals game? And Chris Nowinski, spoiler alert, says he should not play again all year with what just happened. So we all think he will play again this year, but it just seems odd, this whole experience. And you can speak to this better than most, Ross. Tua, if you ask him today, he absolutely said, yeah, I should have returned in the Bills game. I should have played in the Bengals game. What do you think if you ask him in 10 years?
Exactly. Well, I would also say this. I think a lot of people failed in this situation, Andrew, but I do think you know me, I'm a big believer in personal responsibility and personal accountability. And I do think some of the blame should go to Tua. I do. I do think, look, it's obviously the Dolphins team physician and the Dolphins head coach and GM and the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant, all those. But, you know, there have been other players that have said, hey, I'm not right. You know, my head's not right. You know, there have been other players that have admitted to concussion syndrome or concussion symptoms, I should say. Whereas in this case, Andrew, it appears as if Tua lied, as if Tua said, it's my low back. It's not my head. And I'm just sitting there thinking like I have a couple buddies around here that are doctors, and I've heard the way they talk and I've seen their notes, right? Like for me, and it's like, what does it say? Patient is complaining of, patient is presenting. Like a lot of these doctors around here, like if I said to them, you know, oh, it's my knee, they'd be like, well, why are you wobbling? Oh, it's my knee. If the patient lies to you, that's tough. They're not used to patients lying. Like it's on some level, it's a little tough for the doctor when the guy's saying, no, it's not my head, it's my back. Because I don't know how experienced is the unaffiliated neurotrauma guy with football players and football mindset.
Yeah, and here's the last thing I'll say in my area of expertise. He threw 6 touchdown passes the week before that. He's in the same group with Burrow and Herbert that have extension ability next year. Yeah, this is millions and millions of dollars. If he continues on that trajectory, he's getting the big extension next year like Burrow and Herbert, and his life is set. Now, here's a discussion. Teams are already discussing college players. Well, oh no, he's been concussion prone. He had 3 and 4 years, whatever it may be. That would be a discussion about Tua before committing serious tens of millions in guarantees. That would be a discussion. So I don't know if that's going on in Tua's head, but certainly that's a part of this too.
You really need to go ahead and follow him on social media at Andrew Brandt. That way you see the Sports Illustrated weekly column. You sign up for the Sunday newsletter, which is incredible. Love getting that email every Sunday morning. Chock full of information. Helps me to kind of frame some of the things going on around the league. And of course, the Business of Sports podcast. I guarantee I listen to every second of the Chris Nowinski episode because I'm very curious to hear what Chris had to say. Andrew, thank you as always for the time. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Ross. Talk to you soon.
A masterclass from Andrew Brandt on the topic. Speaking of master, how about Masterworks? Masterworks is amazing. They've already got over 500,000 members on their platform. And demand has gotten so high that there's actually a wait list. But our listeners, you guys, can get priority access. You can skip the line, skip the wait list by going to masterworks.com and use promo code Ross. That's masterworks.com, promo code Ross. You can follow the example for some of these opportunities that guys like LeBron get involved in off the field that usually you're not able to get in on these deals. Now you can at masterworks.com, promo code Ross.
Tux Takes.
Let's start today, Ross, with something that's really not a surprise. Pittsburgh Steelers are going to start Kenny Pickett at quarterback this week up in Buffalo against the Bills.
They are. I think everybody knew that was going to happen. I think once they made the decision to move on from Trubisky in the last game and go to Pickett, it's kind of hard to go back after that, isn't it? I mean, I feel like it'll be Pickett for the rest of the year now as they see exactly what they have in him, hope that he gets better every week, tries to give them a spark. And, you know, like I said, I think on yesterday, get some of the rookie mistakes out so he's really ready to hopefully get them back to being a contender next year.
Tux Takes.
Got some transactions. First, the Broncos signed running back Latavius Murray off the Saints practice squad. Obviously, that's in response to Javonte Williams' injury. Texans cut starting tight end Pharaoh Brown. Patriots signed Jamie Collins for a 5th stint with the team. And the Ravens announced that longtime cornerback Jimmy Smith is going to retire after 11 years with the team.
I also saw, Bri, where the Raiders signed Blake Martinez, who's been a tackling machine in Green Bay and New York. A little surprised he was out that long. And the Cardinals cut wide receiver Andy Isabella to sign Billy Price because the Cardinals are banged up along the interior O-lines. They needed an interior O-lineman to come in for some depth purposes. I think they lost both guards in their last game against the Panthers. Well, Hernandez got kicked out. That's a little bit different. As for the moves that you talked about, Bri, it's funny because Latavius Murray just played in London across the pond for the Saints, but now the Broncos lose Javonte Williams, and their GM used to be with Latavius Murray in Minnesota. So he knows George Kokinis. He knows, okay, let's bring in Latavius Murray because I know him. cutting a starting tight end is something you don't see very often from the Texans. I mean, that is rare. And then Jamie Collins signing for the 5th time with the Patriots is crazy rare. And then even Jimmy Smith, I know he got injured, but retiring during the season, you don't normally see guys announce that or do that like Jimmy is. So 3 really rare things there today.
Tuck's Takes.
Tom and Giselle, thoughts?
Well, I actually wasn't even going to mention their name because I don't think that this is something that we should talk about or I should talk about. You know, there's a lot of reports out there about the marital status that Brian just mentioned, and I don't think that's our place. Well, I don't remember ever doing that with any. We've been doing this show for a long time. I don't ever remember there being reports like this about any other player. And I know how popular he is. I know how well known he is. My only comment is that I hope they work it out. I hope they figure it out. People have issues. People, you know, I'm a big believer in counseling. I'm a big believer in trying to work these issues out. Hopefully they're doing all the right things to work it out. I will not comment any further. I think I was asked on like 2 or 3 radio stations about it yesterday. I just don't really think that that is something that that we should be commenting on or talking about it. I think that that's personal and private, and I think it should remain those things. I also think all of you, if you haven't already, should get the Game Time app. I mean, listen, for those of you that are somewhere around Baltimore, you can see me at the Ravens-Bengals game on Sunday. Right now, you can get tickets to Bengals-Ravens, $88. And I bet you it'll be even less as we get closer to the game because the Game Time app guarantees the lowest price on tickets to all your favorite sports, concerts, and shows. You can even check out the view from your seat in the app, and checkout takes less than 30 seconds. So those of you that watch us on YouTube, look, I'm showing you right now, putting my phone up to the screen. You can get tickets to Bengals Ravens for $88. You get Bruce Springsteen concert this Friday. You can get tickets. It's amazing, man. And to know that you're getting guaranteed the lowest tickets, it's awesome. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and redeem code Ross for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's Ross for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time. Last minute tickets. Here's the key. Lowest price guaranteed. Love it. Love that I have a place now that I know is the lowest price guaranteed. Love everybody that checks out the other shows. Joe Dolan, if you just like interesting stats about the NFL, forget fantasy football. He has been a stat and interesting nugget and note machine on the Fantasy Feast. Steve Fezzik and I were up a combined 9 units yesterday on the Even Money podcast. So you need to get in on that. College Draft Podcast has been a blast. Andrew Brandt's Business of Sports is now mandatory. And shout-outs are in order. Pizza Boy Brewing, Sporticulture, HumanHeadNYC.com, SteakhouseSports.com, Go-Bengals.com, Evergreen Economics, Vision Comics with an X, BackOfficeScheduler.com, and of course, the greatest gift you can get any loved one or anyone really in your life, a story all about them from MyFrontPageStory.com. I think we're done here.
Thanks for listening to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Fantasy Feast, Even Money, Business of Sports, and College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, RossTucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.